Hi there, and welcome back to the channel 42 The Journey. I'm really excited you could make out time to actually schedule yourself so that you could actually learn how to code for free. It's super good to see you here, and I hope you're really as excited as I am as we really dive into this whole new world of programming. I know you're excited and a bit scared, but that's normal. Whatever feeling you're having right now, it is valid, and together we'll go through this. So I would want to happily welcome you to your journey, and I would be happy to guide you along this interesting journey. As you already noted in the previous video, we will be focusing first of all on learning the basics of the Linux. Well, as a disclaimer, I want to say that for this programming video, I will be using the Mac OS. So I apologize to people who actually would be working with Windows OS, as the display might be a bit different from what you would see. However, 95 to 98% of the codes would generate or return the same output. So do not worry if you have a different operating system. Don't worry, with ChatGPT and enough Googling, you'll figure it out. So without taking much time of your time, let's dive in. So if you have a Mac OS, the first thing you would want to do to learn about the command line is to first of all open the command line. But before opening the command line, what is the command line? The command line or the shell they are one and both the same thing. Usually the command lines or shell has a program which enables us to interact with it, and that is the bash program, which is an acronym for Born Again Shell. So let's get started and let's open our terminal. If you're having a Mac OS, at the top of your screen, you would see something that looks like a magnifying glass. If you click on it, a search icon or a spotlight search icon will pop up. Well, for Mac users, if you type terminal, it would open the drop-down menu, and from this menu, you can actually click terminal. This would open the scary black box, but it's okay. As long as we know what we're doing, we will be fine. Think about the terminal as a language which the computer only understands. Take, for example, you basically speak a language, and that is a language that, reaches your heart. If you were to come to, for example, Germany, and you were to speak, French at the German embassy, or maybe Greek, you would find it very hard, to communicate with people there, because even though you're talking, you're not communicating, and they too are not understanding. So the same thing with the computer. We're trying to speak a language, learn a new language, and speak it to the computer using the command line as a means. So we have to make sure that we really use the right terms and the right language to talk to the computer. If not, it's not going to be happy. So what does this language look like? Well, let's try a couple of things and see how the computer feels when we speak in a language it doesn't understand. So right now we're on the terminal, and what you can see here is basically the username or who currently is accessing command line. In this case, that would be me. And the first thing we want to do is basically we just want to say something to it. So I'm just going to say hello, and I'm going to click enter. Oops. It seems it doesn't recognize this language hello. I was trying to be nice, and it gives me an error that the command is not found. Well, we just learned our lesson. The first lesson is that not all commands are acceptable. Sometimes some of them are just not understandable by the command line. So what do we do? Well, if we really want to interact with the command line, we need to actually give it commands it can understand, interpret, analyze, and then produce an output. What commands are these? There are tons and tons and tons of them. But let's look at some of the commands that, for now, don't worry about what these commands are, but let's see how the computer reacts when we give it something it understands. Say we speak in a language it understands. For example, we can use the command ping. Don't worry about what ping is, but let's assume we want to connect with Google. Ping can be used to actually send messages and receive messages from a website. So let's say we want to ping Google or Facebook or whatever website you think about. We can do ping google.com and we click on the enter and voila. Right now we're interacting with the computer. We're saying something to it and it's saying something back to us. Right now it's sending a message to Google and the Google servers are responding back. This is one way in which we can communicate with our computer. Well, let's say you're stuck on this. Well, there's a shortcut which you can use to actually stop a process that is running continuously. You can hold the control plus the C option to actually kill a process. So if we press Control C, this would stop the process that we actually did, which was the ping command. So the whole idea right now is that, first of all, if you give the computer or the command line a command it doesn't understand, it just screams back at you. It says, give me something to understand. The second thing we need to understand is that if we give a command it understands, it processes it and gives you an output. If you're stuck within, an output that you really don't understand, what you can simply do is press Ctrl C, which kills the process and returns you back to the command line. Let's assume you've done a very long day. You've worked for like 10 hours straight up and you really want to exit the terminal. What can you do, for example, to save your history? Well, you can simply press the Ctrl D or type in exit to save your results, save your history and exit the terminal. So simply we can just type exit and when we click it, it tells us that, it's saving our session for whatever we've done so far since the last exit and it stores it somewhere. Don't worry about where it stores it. That's going to be a topic for another time. So in summary, just to recapitulate before we go next, we've talked about quite a couple of things. First of all, we've talked about the shell. That the shell is simply the command line, or the command line is simply the shell. We've also talked about that there is a program within the shell that enables us to communicate with it, which is the bash program or the zish program, depending on what command line you're using or operating system you're using. And we've also seen that the bash program actually requires a certain kind of information or command for it to respond back to you. And these are commands. Commands are basically instructions given to the shell using bash to perform a certain task. If we give it a command it understands, it performs the task and gives us an output. However, if we give it a command it doesn't understand, it just screams at us until we do what's right. Now that we've gotten an idea of what the command line looks like, let's see how we can navigate the command line. Before talking about the navigation of a command line, I would like to give you a simple analogy that might be able to help you understand how a computer is structured. Now, you're currently somewhere, most likely a house. Maybe you're in a park. But just think about the house. A house is always like a building with several rooms inside, and these rooms could have rooms or it could have items in it. A computer is such like that kind of house. It is a big house, which we call the root directory, that has smaller rooms in it, which we call the subdirectories. And these subdirectories or these rooms can have other rooms, which are additional other subdirectories or items in them, which we can refer to as files. So your personal computer, which you're currently using to work now, is actually organized into a hierarchical directory structure. This means it's like organized in a tree-like pattern or in a house-like pattern where you can have a house, the root directory, housing other rooms, which are the subdirectories. And these rooms can house either a room or an object, which could be other directories or files respectively. At any point in time when you're at home, you're always going to be in a particular room. I mean, you can be in two places at the same time. It's also the same thing for a computer. At any point in time, you're going to be in a room. And remember, a room, directory, a file, object. I'll repeat it again. A room is a directory, a file is an object. The house is the root directory. In your house, at every point in time, there is always somewhere where you are. Maybe today you're at the kitchen, or tomorrow you're at the garage, or you're at the sitting room. But you can't be at the kitchen, garage, and sitting room at the same time. It's just not humanly possible. Yet, and hope never. But for the computer, it's also the same thing. How do we know where we are? in the computer at any point in time? Well, there is a simple command which we can use to actually find and show us where we are currently in our room or directory. And that command is called the pwd, which means the print working directory. So if you type pwd in your computer right now and you click the enter, it shows you where you are. Currently, you can see on my file that I'm in 2 directories down from house, which is the root directory. So I am in the user, which is our first room, and that user has another room, which is Ocholo O. So basically, I'm 2 rooms in. Does that make sense? So we have our house. The first room is the user. The second room is Ocholo O, and that's where I am right now. Now, what about if we want to move from one room to another? What can we do? Interestingly, the command line has a command that enables us to move from one room to another. I mean, it would be very boring if we were always in the garage and we can't move out. The computer also allows us to move from one directory to another using a nice command or a well-known command known as the cd. Now, the cd means change directory. It means move from one room to another, or from one directory to another. And how can we do this? Well, when we use the cd, we always pass the directory name we want to go into as an argument. So for example, if we press cd, and I'll give you a trick. If you do not know what directories are there at the moment when you want to change into, after you press cd, press space, and then press tabs. When you do that, it calls you all the directories that are available in. So again, cd space plus tabs. Of important note is the fact that we can only change into a directory, but never into a file, because the name implies change directory. So we change from one room to another, not from one room to a thing. Room to room, directory to directory. Got it? Great. So now these are all our rooms. The ones that have the backslash are the ones that we call directories, and they are the rooms we can move into. So we'll quickly move into one room. Let's say we want to go into the desktop, and then we can do DE. And if you don't have the time to type all of it, just press the tabs again. Boom, completes it. So now we are changing into a directory. At the end of your input, you can always press enter to execute that command. So currently we are in the desktop. Now let's go back to your room. Look around you. What do you see? Hopefully something. Yeah. So often at times your room is filled with things. It could be a clock, it could be a plant, it could be a spoon, it could be a plate, it could be a cup, whatever. These things exist in your room or in your space. Now in computer, these things, we refer to them as what? Files. How can you tell what things are present in your current directory? The computer gives us an interesting command to do that, and that is the ls. So it's used for listing all files and directories within a current directory. So if we press ls, it would list out everything. Want to see what's on my desktop? I'm sure you do want to see. Boom, we get a list of things, usually screenshots and screen recordings. Anyway, this is how we show what's present in our current directory. If you press ls on your command line, you're going to get the list of things that is currently present in your directory. And again, remember, how can we tell what directory we're in? We just have to press pwd, hit enter, and it tells us. So now we're 3 directories away from the root directory. We're in the user, then Ocholo O, and then the desktop. And all these things which we did with the ls are present only in the desktop. Does it make sense? Are you seeing the connections? Hopefully yes. If not, take a few minutes, rewatch the video. All right, hopefully it's now making sense, so we get on. Now with the ls, we can see all the things in our directory, and with the cd, we can change to another directory. But you might have been asking, what if we want to go back? How do we do it? Can we use cd? Yes, we can. So you can use cd to change into a directory further or to go back a directory. And also the command line gives us an option which we can add to the CD to enable us either go forward or back away from our current directory, and that's given by 2 dots. So when you think about, or when you see dot dot, it means going one step back, especially when it's used as an argument or together with CD. So if we wanted to go back to our previous directory or the other room, what we would do is to press CD dot dot, and then we add a backslash and we click enter. And now if we do pwd, we find out that we're now back in user Ochula O. Remember, before we were in user Ochula O desktop, and now we're back by one directory to user Ochula O. Again, cd dot dot enables us to go back. Now let's go a bit inner, 3 more directories. And we enter. So now if we do pwd, we see we're now 3 directories deeper. 5 directories deeper away from the root directory. So we're in user Ochula O, desktop, project 42, and then YouTube contents. Again, you can play around your system and see how much directories you can go in. You can go in as much as possible. Remember, you can only change into a directory, but not in a file. So you can move from one room to another. You can move from a room into a thing. So you want to keep that in mind when you're playing around directories. Now, let's assume we want to go back. What do we do? Remember, we have the dot dots that tells us to go a directory back. What if we want to go back to the original directory? Now, this is where 2 important concepts come into play, which is the absolute part and the relative parts. Okay, let's go back to our house. Remember, we said that the house itself is the root directory. So it's from this root directory all the rooms and things are sorted out. Now, the absolute part basically tells us that we can go from our current directory either back to a directory of interest or forward to a directory of interest using the path names. Again, I repeat it, we can go from our current directory either backwards or forward to our directory of interest using specific path names. So let's say right now we want to go back to our, let's say, user. Let's say we want to go back to user. How would we do that? We check, we have 1 directory, 2 directories, 3 directories, 4 directories, 5 directories. So we have 5 directories back. So what does that mean? We can do cd dot dot 1 directory, 2 directories, 3 directory, 4 directory, 5 directory, and enter. Now if we do pwd, we did 1 more directory, so that should be cd user. So actually that was 4 directory back. So you see what we did there. We counted the number of directories. I actually included the current directory, which I should not have done, and then we counted it back and we saw that we were 4 directories away from the directory we wanted to go through. And without knowing anything, we just did the double dots 4 times and it took us all the way back to the previous directory. Again, that's how the absolute part works. We're using where we are to go to where we want to go. Let's say we want to, again, right now, if we do pwd, we see we're in the users. Let's say we want to go to the downloads. How do we do that? We're going to use the absolute part to go to our current to go to the download directory. So again, we use cd, but this time instead of going back, we're going forward. We use tabs, and we see we have Ochula and shared, so we use Ochula, and then we go tabs again. Now we see download, so we do downloads. Great. And then we do tabs again. 326 lines. No, we don't want to see all of them. So let's just say this. So basically now we've moved from our user directory or the user room to the download directory or the download room. And this is basically the path we took. We went through Ochula O, through downloads, and now we are currently at downloads. And that is the absolute part. Now, the relative part is totally different. The relative part, you start from the root directory and you find your way through the directory you want to go through. So, for example, we're in downloads. Let's say we want to go back to project 42 without using dots, going back and forward. How can we do that? This is where the relative part comes in. So what we do is we use the cd and the / This automatically takes us to the root directory, and if we press tabs, we see everything. So we're now from the root, the home directory, and we are moving forward. So again, we do users, and then we do Ochula O, and then we go to projects. We go to desktop, and then we go to projects, not programming jobs. Programmers don't have jobs. Often at times they don't. They just like doing stuff. And then we go to project outline. Again, look at this code before I click enter. Remember, we were currently at the users. So this is where we were right now. What are we doing? From the users, we are moving using a relative part to the users to get to project outline. If we click on this and we do pwd, we see now that currently we are in the project outline directory. Again, two different ways to move from one directory to another. As a way of recapitulation, the absolute part involves starting from the current directory where you are, moving through a path to your destination directory. The relative part talks about you starting from the house itself, so the root directory, and then in one direction, you're going to the directory of interest relative to where you were before. Again, this might not be a bit clear, but if you watch the video again, this might become clearer with time. So we also talked about the double dots, that literally means going back, and we also used the forward and the tabs that helps you to go forward. So we've talked about a lot of things today. However, before wrapping it up, I'm going to show you some easy things you can do to move. Command line has a very interesting feature that enables you to have some certain kind of shortcuts. For example, we are currently at the project outline directory. What if we want to go back to Ochula O without doing the relative or the absolute parts? Well, if you have a Mac OS, kindly press the Alt and the first of all, do the CD, then a space, then you press the Alt and the N, and you're going to get this, squiggly line, and then hit enter. Now, when we do PWD, we see we're back at Ochula O. What is that squiggly line? Well, it's more like a shortcut that tells CD that, hey guy, we want to go to the home directory. But what is the home directory? Now, on your laptop, I want you to press env, which it means it's a command that shows you all the environmental variables currently active on your terminal, and you hit enter. When you do that, look for somewhere where you see home. Okay, here I find it, and that's home. What does this mean? It means that whenever the command cd sees that squiggly line, it automatically replaces it with what? You get it now? It replaces it with the relative parts. So basically, it just starts from the house and replaces it with user and Ochulo O, and so we can then move to Ochulo O. The fun thing is that you can actually modify this, but please do not modify this. It's good to keep it like this so that anytime you're stuck, you can actually go to your home. Okay, we've covered a lot today. And we've talked about the fact that, first of all, what a shell is, and that it runs on the bash program to interpret commands and gives us output. We've talked about Control C, how it stops an ongoing process. We've talked about Control D, how we use it to end your terminal session, or you type in exit into the command and you click on it to end your process. We've talked about print working directory, which is basically pinpointing where you are at that current point in time in your computer system. So basically finding out where you are in your room. We've talked about ls, which means to list directory content, and we've talked about cd, which helps you to move from one room to another or from one directory to another. There is a lot we've talked about. We've talked about the absolute and the relative parts. Now you might ask yourself, why do you think all of this is important? Well, these are the basic foundations of your Linux. It's just a tip of the icebergs, because once we start going deeper and deeper into moving, arranging, navigating through the system, exploring it, manipulating files and directories, or building little programs, you will get to see that you would be using these commands a lot. So this is an introduction to the shell. I hope you found it very helpful, that you could play around with some of these commands. This is how the program would be, where we would play around with things and would try to answer questions. You will get ideas as to why these things exist and what they mean. If during the course of this coding school you come across a concept that you feel I don't clearly explain it, or you don't understand it, please feel free to shoot me a message either via the comment section or through my personal email, and I will do my best to get back to you. I want to say welcome, welcome, welcome again to the free coding course. We're going to play along with Linux, we're going to play along with C, we're going to play along with Python. And by the time we're done with this course, you're going to be ready to start making your own mini applications. So, once again, thank you for bringing up your time. I hope you found this very helpful. It's the very basics, but this will be the building blocks, because when next we start the next course coming up soon, or the next video coming up soon, we're going to be exploring the system, we're going to be making files, we're going to be making directories. So basically we're going to be building our own rooms and building our own things. We're going to be manipulating them, so moving them from one place to another, some kind of rearrangement, and we're going to build a playground. So this is something that will be happening in the next video. Well, till then, if you found this video very helpful as a way of introducing you into Linux programming, please like on the video, share it with others whom you feel might be interested in learning how to program. Again, I hope my speed was not too fast and you could follow along with my analogies. Till next video, I wish you a very wonderful day and stay awesome. Enjoy your coding experience and see you when next. Bye.